Zero bonus episode number 15. Not to be confused with immediate reaction episodes, which is another new thing we do. But this is a bonus episode, which means it's huge, it's gigantic like everything we do. And this one is all about Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I'm your host, Brandon Davis, joined today by Jenna Anderson.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to talk about this movie with spoilers. I'm so happy because obviously there's so much to unpack. So,
Ooh, there is. Aaron Perrine is here.
We've been sitting on stuff for like 3 weeks. Thank God. We're finally here. All right. What's up, everybody?
And if your name is Aaron Perrine, you're also sitting on official Marvel Studios promos. The movie percolates with purpose, and everybody knows it thanks to Aaron Perrine. Congratulations, Aaron. That was dope.
Thank you. People are just like still texting me stuff, and then when they get out of the movie, they're like, "Wow, it really did percolate with purpose." Holy crap!
It's time for the percolator with purpose. We got Jamie Jirac.
Good morning from what I can only describe as a haunted Airbnb.
Yeah.
hell yeah.
It honestly does look like you are coming to us live from the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. All right, this is the spoiler-filled review, breakdown, Easter egg, all things in between and outside the box Black Panther Wakanda Forever episode of Phase Zero. That means if you haven't seen the movie yet, it will fully be ruined for you in this episode of Phase Zero. So maybe go watch it and come back. Richard, Peter, behind the scenes, if we have a little spoiler bumper for the lower portion of the show today, I think we should run that on our live show because I know we're broadcasting on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube, and I don't want anybody to come in here and stumble upon something like, boom, Ramona dies. So I warned you. I warned everybody. And that's the kind of thing we're going to be talking about today. And that was shocking. That was one of the few things that I really did not see coming, and it's one of the many things we're going to talk about today. We're going to go around with reactions, reviews, thoughts, and spoilers are allowed to fly in these. So, Jamie, you're at the top of the screen. What did you think of Black Panther Wakanda Forever?
I thought it was really good. I think all the things that they had to work with, they did it with grace, and they did it in a very impressive way. I don't think I liked it as much as the rest of you. I do have criticisms. There was a huge chunk in the middle of that movie where I was sitting there like, I don't know if I like this. I'm done with this. But then it won me back over in the end. So ultimately, it came out to be a 4-star movie for me. I need to see it again because it could easily get bumped up. I don't see it getting bumped down. I'll tell you that much. So it's in a good place. But I do think I will be the harshest of us today.
All right. Hey, we always need one. I'm glad it's not me today. Jenna, how you feeling? What'd you think of Wakanda Forever?
I echo a lot of what Jamie said. I definitely don't think it is a completely flawless movie. I do think that, like, I've only still seen it once. Chris saw it twice last night, and he told me you still feel the runtime when you're sitting there and watching basically 3 hours of it. But I still say what I said on Wednesday of everything you're seeing is so interesting that you almost don't care that the runtime is as long as it is. And I think it is just such a narrative and just like larger miracle that the movie came together the way that it did, given all of the circumstances. It is just such a beautiful and earnest and wonderful movie that it kind of allows me to overlook some of the flaws because I just was enjoying so much of it.
Aaron?
You can probably read a lot of my larger thoughts, but I'll try and summarize here. I think that as a meditation on grief, it really succeeds exceedingly well. When it's celebrating Chadwick, it's probably at its strongest. But also, I don't envy the task of having to do, franchise maintenance in a movie of this size with this many moving parts. And the fact that none of the cogs kind of fall off of the machine is a testament to Ryan Coogler and this cast and this crew that it stays on the rails the way that it does. I would say I feel like some people are going to bounce off of it because there's no real outlet for the discomfort of it in some ways. I feel like it being a MCU movie, you have certain expectations, and it does kind of bounce against those in certain ways. I think that I read a review from another outlet. I need to look it up who said it. But like, there's a way that this movie could have ended that would have really made it super subversive, but they kind of backed away at the end. That might have been, in some ways, maybe more interesting. But I do enjoy, or at least I think it's interesting to have one of these where you kind of have to sit in the boiling pot of water, and there's not like, Patton Oswalt tumbling out of a portal to like break you out of it. I'm
overall, I'm very high on this movie. I thought it was really good. I think it's really interesting that this one got 2 hours and 41 minutes, where if we took 10 minutes off of this and gave it to Thor and 10 minutes off of another 10 minutes off of it and gave it to Doctor Strange, and this was 220 and both of those were 210, all three movies would have been better for it. So that's kind of interesting to think about, that this one got all the runtime and those suffered from not having any. And I'm curious, I would love to be a fly on the wall and see if any of the theories are true about the runtime constraints and stuff. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think this was just I thought it was really good. And I've liked it more every time I've seen it. I've seen it 3 times now. And unlike like when I saw Thor Love and Thunder the first time, I had so much fun. I laughed so much. And then I went on opening night versus like premiere night. The energy's great. Everybody's laughing, and I had a great time. And I was so entertained that it was one of those where like, when you show a TikTok that you think is funny to your friend and then they don't laugh and you're like, wait, but that was funny. That's how I felt. I sat with Richard at Thor Love and Thunder and he just wasn't laughing and most of the theater wasn't laughing and I wasn't even laughing as much because the laughter is contagious and I wasn't catching it. And I was like, man, whoa. And this one has been the opposite. I saw it at the premiere night. I saw it again the next night. And then I saw it again last night on opening night. And I've liked it more every time. So, I mean, it's definitely a little long and you feel it. Like, I feel like some of the Namor backstory stuff started to was when I started to feel like a little bit of the runtime started to slow down and took a step back. And there were some scenes that I was just like, there wasn't anything I'm like, we don't really need that except for some of the stuff in the US, which we'll talk about. I was like, why are we spending so much time over here? But overall, I mean, I thought it was great. You definitely feel Chadwick's absence. I don't feel like you can really criticize the movie for not having Chadwick in it, obviously. So that's something I refuse to do. But I'd be lying if I said like it felt like there was a centralized character that really carried. And it was obviously Shuri, but it like you still just feel the presence of T'Challa that he brings to it was not there, obviously. And it was interesting to see how they filled that. I think they did a really good job, the best possible job they could do to fill that void. And everybody stepped up. I would have liked to see a little bit more M'Baku that we got, but the rest of the cast was incredible. Everybody got kind of chances to shine. And overall, I thought it was a really good story that introduced one of the best villains we've seen in the MCU and certainly the best villain since Thanos. All right, so that's it. For me, this one's ranking high. This is top 3 minimum in the movies of Phase 4. That's. I'm not going to spoil it. We have our Phase 4 rankings show on December 7th. You got to tune in to find out. All right, we're going to do all the Phase 4 after the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special wraps us up. But tune into Phase 0, December 7th for the ultimate chaos.
I'm already dreading where this is going to be on my ranking.
Seriously.
Like, I know this is going to be lower than most. Even though I want to say 4 stars, I'd like to repeat, that's a good ranking. But I don't think it's even my favorite movie of the year. So, but we'll see. We'll see.
It's not your favorite Marvel movie of the year? Why? Because there wasn't enough Wanda Maximoff?
No, the reason I love Multiverse of Madness is not just because of Wanda. It's because I'm a big Raimi fan. And just the style of that. But again, I have to see it a second time. I think that and I will before our ranking. So that could blow up everything,
That's sure. That's fair. I will spoil this part of my ranking. I said this in a tweet already. It is my number 1 of the year, and it's not close overall for me.
Okay.
I think this was a fantastic film, especially by comparison to the other 2 films that came this year overall. All right, we're going to go character by character to do today's show. And of course, we're going to start with the main character, Shuri. I think Letitia Wright put on a hell of a performance. Really was burdened with unexpectedly putting this movie on her back. And fortunately, she had a tremendous cast and director to support her and help her. But I think she did a really good job with this performance. And I thought the journey Shuri went on for it coming so out of nowhere. I mean, I thought it was good. I thought the arc by the end showing mercy was really good. What do you, Aaron, you're next on the screen here. What'd you think?
I really was kind of curious to see what would happen because, with everything that got rumored during the production of this movie and the other circumstances and everything else, just like it's a lot for still a younger actress to really take on. And she really, really comes through very, very well. There's a level of the sort of drowning in grief that you can obviously a lot of us can relate to. I find that stuff to be very, very compelling. It's not often in these movies that the main character is allowed to give in to the darker parts of the antagonist's argument, and it's alluring, and it appeals to you on a visceral level. It makes sense, like in certain ways. Like it has been very rough for her upbringing, you know. So I was very impressed. Also, she's game to do these sequels where Black Panther is going to be a part of these giant action set pieces, because boy howdy does she throw a lot more hands in this than little pew pews during Black Panther. So yeah, I didn't know how much I was gonna like it when everybody was saying there was rumors about like her being. I was like, I will see how that goes, but I think it went pretty darn well, you know.
The claws on the side of that ship at the end were killing me. Oh my god, that was nails on a chalkboard, but vibranium on vibranium, and I was oof. I did, Jenna, what you got?
You just have the opposite of ASMR right now. I am so like, even just thinking about it gets me a little emotional, because it's like I have liked so much of Shuri in the MCU, but I've always felt like they've kind of done a little bit of her character a disservice, because it felt like they weren't fully leaning into her comic counterpart at times. It felt like they almost were giving her a lot of comic Riri's personality traits, like in the earlier parts of the MCU, and not letting her get into this more emotional kind of like chip on your shoulder type of thing, because that wasn't what suited the story. And so I had kind of resigned myself to the fact of like, we'll probably never get that story, but they found such a natural and such a brilliant way to go about it, and to just make me so enthralled every single second that she was on screen. Like I am in awe of how they handled that, because it does feel like this perfect blend of like where she was, who she is in the comics. They just like mashed it all up together so perfectly given the circumstances.
Jamie, what you thinking?
Shuri was what worked the best for me in this movie. I think that first of all, I know there was some behind the scenes stuff, but her performance was just phenomenal, and I think the way that she was the voice of the grief, and the way that everyone's feeling, and it was hard not to think of Chadwick's real family in her moments, and also ultimately when this movie ended, to me it felt like her origin story, and in a way that I thought was really beautiful and very well handled. When Angela Bassett died, I was like, I didn't like it at first, because I was like, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. My queen, my woman, my goddess is leaving us from this franchise, and I was ticked. But the way that it brought us to Shuri and brought us what it did, I think it all really tied together so beautifully. And I was really, really impressed with that arc above anything. And my favorite part of it, which I'm sure we will get to the big cameo, which, we all wondered, how are we going to fit Killmonger into the story, and it could not have been more perfect. For her to see him, I think was maybe the most powerful part of the movie, not just because we got to see him, but because that's dark. That was a dark choice, a dark thing that's who she saw, and ultimately helped influence where she went. And I really, all so beautiful. And also she's the tiniest little lady, and seeing her kick so much ass was like, yeah, get it. Little ladies can do it too. And I loved that about it as well.
Jamie, do you know that Ruth Carter modeled her stuff after ballerinas? Like that's what she thought about.
That makes so much sense, because I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's so cool.
Cool. I love that fact.
Killmonger showing up continues Ryan Coogler's streak of never having directed a feature film without Michael B. Jordan. So that's an interesting little fact.
Yeah.
The last words that Shuri said to Ramonda were "Love you, bye," and she hung up on her. And I think that's really interesting, because obviously she didn't know that this was going to be the last words, and it's really weird to think about how so much of this movie reflects what the cast actually went through. It seems a lot of people really truly didn't know Chadwick was sick and was going to pass away. And I feel like their characters really, in a lot of ways, we watched them go through what a lot of these cast members went through in their real life relationship with Chadwick. So that was interesting. That was just hard to think about when I saw Ramonda pass away. I was like, oh my God, she drowned. And the last thing Shuri did was hang up on her. And then the next time I watched it, I was like, the last thing she said was "Love you, bye." Whew. That was tough. We were all grateful, I think, that Shuri showed mercy to Namor, because we wanted more Namor, at least. And by we, I mean me. I don't know if I mean everybody, but that fight scene was incredible. When that camera panned in on Shuri in the desert, I was like, hold up, directed by Chloe Zhao, because it was like clearly it looked as like a real desert as it could possibly be, and a lot of sky in there. But that what do you guys think about the dynamic between Namor and Shuri?
I loved it so much. I know we're going to talk about Namor writ large, but I love his delivery of the bit of like, you could go down to Talokan and your bones would crush and your skull would do blah, blah, blah. Or you can just wear a little swimsuit. Like we have that for you. We have a diving suit. Like his delivery of that was so great. Their rapport was so great. I love that they didn't make it this purely antagonistic thing the entire movie. Like I love that there was kind of this sense of betrayal and then this like going back around to just trauma and just their kind of shared connection. I thought that was such a brilliant way to take this arc and just make it about those two characters first and foremost.
I enjoyed how ultimately the conclusion of their arc was a direct reflection of T'Challa and showed how Shuri really learned how to take on a bit of nobility and some of the Wakandan traditions, because she said to Namor what T'Challa said to Zemo at the end of Civil War, or like a version of it, because what T'Challa said to Zemo was, vengeance has consumed you. I will not let it consume me. And what she said to Namor was, vengeance has consumed us. We cannot let it consume our people, which I don't know if, T'Challa and Shuri talked off screen and he was like, yeah, and then I caught him and I said this. So she felt the need to echo it, or this just goes to show if they didn't have that conversation, how much like her brother and her family she really is now, how much she's embraced it. And that just happened naturally. So I find that really interesting. And speaking of lines from other movies, the M'Baku challenge, where he emerged with the Jabari tribe during the challenge and to challenge for the throne at the beginning of the first Black Panther. And he talked about Shuri. He said, you get your technological advancements from a child who scoffs at tradition. And at Ramonda's funeral, Shuri repeated that to M'Baku and said, oh, now you would seek advice from a child who scoffs at tradition. And I think that the relationship between Shuri and M'Baku is really beautiful too, because I would even say M'Baku's choices in this film were more, I like to believe this at least, were more influenced by the desire to keep Shuri safe because of the promise he made to T'Challa to look after her than looking after his own people, which I hope he's looking after the Jabari people as well. But the way his mind changed so quickly from let's kill the fish man to, let's do what's going to protect Shuri was really interesting when he saw how the burden and the danger and the risk became, Shuri's to bear. And I thought that was a really interesting shift from M'Baku, and it could have, reflected T'Challa's legacy and Ramonda's legacy.
I love that. I completely agree.
There was one moment where I was like, should I be shipping them?
I was so worried about that.
I know. I was like, there was a real line. And I'm like, if this was a different movie with different themes, I would have been like, I think that's what should be happening. But then I was like, no, that's not what's happening. And that's good. But there was a second where I was like, oh, okay.
I was like, they better not do that. But if they did it, they would probably find a way to thread that needle. But I'm so glad they didn't, because the age difference alone, I'm just like, I don't know.
Speaking of weird shipping stuff, friend of the program, Rachel Leischman, in her screening, when Namor was talking to Shuri and they're like commiserating over we should burn the world together, someone in the front of their screen went, "This is some Raylo shit. I don't like this," and I laughed very hard. And it's been bouncing around in my brain for 3 days. And that's the vibe I got too. I'm like, Sue Storm is in trouble, y'all. She ain't even here yet. She is in trouble. Oh, poor John Krasinski in the corner looking like Smithers. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be so funny.
Burn.
Perfect.
I'm not going to lie. I had the same thought, Jamie. I just didn't want to be the one to say it. When they were sitting there in underground in Talokan, Tenoch has those eyes. I was like, hold on, are they really? And then they didn't. And I was like, okay, good. Yeah, that would have been very Raylo. All right, well, we brought him up. Let's go to the next character. Honestly, we have to talk about Namor or Namor, however you want to pronounce it. He pronounces it Namor. The characters in the movie around him from Wakanda pronounced it Namor. I have my whole life pronounced it Namor, so I have continued to do that. But I think that's an interesting part of the conversation to start with, because we're going to talk about this journey, and all hail to Tenoch because he did an amazing job. We're going to talk about his comic references and everything. But I find it interesting that he introduces himself as Namor. We get a reveal of what the name means to him, which we'll talk about. But still, Wakandan characters called him Namor throughout the film.
So that doesn't feel like both culturally, which I won't speak to the specifics of, but I was talking to Nicole about this and she said there's like a cultural precedent for that. But I also feel like it feels very similar to how in certain Batman things, if you're in the League of Assassins, you call Ra's al Ghul Ra's al Ghul, but if you're not, you call him Ra's al Ghul. So I think it was one of those kinds of things of like culturally, depending on how close you are to this like noble royal person, that depends on how you pronounce his name. That was how I saw it.
Interesting.
I tended to think that it was a reflection of like both intimacy, like Jenna is pointing to, and like, you know, cultural outsiders, right? So my enemies call me Namor, and he pronounced it very, very anglicized then. But Namor is all how, like, you know, Talakan says his name. So I felt like that was like a shrewd thing because you could tell, you know, whenever he appears again, whenever he appears again in this, you're gonna get Val or somebody saying his name in the most nasally, wrong pronounced way of possible on purpose to show they clearly don't know who they're messing with, right?
I was so relieved when they started saying Namor because I was like, because when he said his name, I was like, oh no, I've been saying it wrong and I've already committed it to memory because I'm really bad at name pronunciations. Now I have to change everything I know. But then they went to, I'm like, okay, Namor's, we can say it. It's okay.
Yeah, it was interesting that they assigned that meaning to his name because that's
I
not
love
something from the comics. It was this story. I'm not gonna lie. When young Namor started flying for the first time, I thought that was hilarious. I was like, hold on, I can't take, like, he just rises up and the music is like, ah! And I was like, yo, this is kind of hilarious that this little kid's flying. But when he took his name to mean the child without love, in you know, if you're speaking in Spanish, namor would be, you know, no love. I found that to be really interesting that this name that has existed in Marvel Comics for so long, they found a way to thread such a meaningful definition to the character for the MCU. I found that really interesting and creative.
I agree. I'm in awe of like how well this character has been around for so long. He is arguably one of the first superheroes that Marvel ever had. And just to be able to not have had any of this cultural stuff be in the text, but to have it feel so organic and so natural to be part of the text. Like, I'm so excited to see the Namor media that exists after this and to see like how the comics start to pick up on this a little bit more. Because it feels like the Atlantis and the Namor from the comics was always just this very like Pangea sort of character of like, he's from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But I love that they assigned this like cultural significance to so much of what he did because it was just so brilliantly well done. Like, it felt like it should have always been there.
Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
Oh no, I was ready to share my Namor take, so I think you should go first.
I was just gonna say, it seems pretty obvious that they probably switched up the Atlantis because Aquaman already hit theaters, and they found a way to then make it even still very interesting. I'm not a comics purist. I'm a person who loves Spider-Man being mentored by Tony Stark. I'm okay with that. I know. Come for me. But yeah. So sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
I was, you know, like I thought that Namor's a really cool character, and his performance was awesome. I really do look forward to seeing more of him. But I think it was my least favorite part of the movie.
What?
Wow! I know, and there are a couple reasons. I will explain myself. Again, I'm not saying it was bad by any means. It's just in the runtime, it's what I felt the most. And first of all, I personally am just not into like, full Jamie. I'm just like not into underwater-y stuff like that. Like blue underwater people, one of my least favorite genres. And then that's just my personal taste. That's not like, and his backstory I really enjoyed, but his motivations did not work for me. I thought that like him wanting, the way he wanted to kill Riri and everything was very loose. And like, we just got to kill her and all of our problems will be solved. And like, it never was resolved because it never really seemed to matter. I think it was an odd motivation. His bigger motivations really worked for me, protecting his people and the differences between Wakanda, which is why I'm very excited for the future of the character and the future of these people. But his like the motivation was a little weak for me in this specific case. But that's not to say I didn't enjoy the character or the performance, because I deeply did. It's just that I hope don't come for me. It's
Peter in the comment section.
Yes,
News for you. You
please.
are going to hate Avatar 2.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I'm not going to see Avatar 2. I have zero plans to see that movie. So yeah, I did the mutant stuff. Awesome. Here for it. Super cool. And I did really, really love the final showdown between the two of them a lot. So it worked for me, but not as much as the rest of the movie.
I mean, I found his haste to want to burn down the surface world. Like, oh man, that's pretty bold. That's quite the take and way to write that. But like, if you look at our real world, there are some real world leaders who want to do some dumb plundering. I mean, like our own country does some stupid, all around the world. You find that there are leaders who, I mean, look at Ukraine and Russia. People just attacking people. So
fair. I can't argue that.
Yeah.
I think that it's not too unrealistic to think that somebody could just want to preemptively try to take other people out, even if you don't agree with it. And that's honestly why I think I like this character so much, because it's similar to Thanos. Obviously, completely different goals, but and not completely different, but very different means to achieve different goals. But I love Thanos as a character. I don't agree with wiping out half the universe, but we all understand his logic and why he wants to do it. So I thought Namor and the performance by Tenoch Huerta was just really good. I mean, certainly I think there were elements of this that could have been a little bit better, told a little bit more quickly, maybe. I need to stop complaining about run times, because then they're going to crack down back to the 2-hour thing. And honestly, the runtime got easier for me the more I watched it.
See, all of you are like, the Namor sequence, like the flashback was like where you guys started to feel the runtime. That was where I was like, give me an entire special presentation of this. Like, I was enthralled by it. I thought it was really fascinating. And I was partially worried going in that they would make him like a little bit younger in the canon of the Marvel universe. But the fact that it's like, no, the conquistadors are part of his origin story and he's been around for this long. I was so glad that they did that. And I think that then leads into his motivation and his like need for self-preservation. And I thought that was just so compelling because it was so different from the vast majority of Marvel villains that we've gotten. So I was happy with it.
I would just like to say Dumb Plundering is my favorite Wu-Tang Clan album. And the middle part, actually, in my review, Jamie would not like it. There's too much water. So much.
It was a beautiful review. I read.
Thank you. I think that it's really interesting thematically to have them be underwater and have it be interspersed, have it be so dark, and then him be like a signal of light, and he brought that to his kingdom. Yeah. I really am fascinated. Thinking about this is basically another version of Wakanda in a lot of ways, right? And it's sort of like, I guess all that time underwater strengthened it for me. Like, hey, we are not different. All of our meeting sites, there's a reason we're doing all these long, loving shots of them in this weird, bizarre. And also, like, I felt bad when Nakia took out the guards that were holding Shuri and Riri. I was like, yo, she gave her a melon. Why'd you shoot her? Why'd you shoot her? Chill out. But I guess that's it would hit differently for other people, right? And I also, just as an African American person, Haiti is like a sore spot for both cultures. Like, it's a very, very real thing that when it happened, I was like, wait, what? We just go, all right then, sounds good. Me and Nick were like, handshake on that when it happened, after we talked about it last night. So yeah, I do get it is a little bit lengthy, but I feel like not only did that do that stuff to strengthen our understanding of him and how you could get warped and sort of corrupted by all this power, or not even corrupted, but just be influenced by all this power and the desire to protect your own people. But also, funny enough to me too, I just wanted to ask, because I wrote it when Brandon was looking for Easter eggs on the Easter egg breakdown. Y'all should watch that on the YouTube channel. That glowing orb that's in the middle of their city, they spent a lot of time, it's been a good 8 to 10 seconds lingering on it. I feel like that has something to do with something. I don't think that was on accident, for real.
Yeah, I have no idea. I will say, though, to your point about the light and the darkness stuff, my one other complaint about this movie is the very first scene when he meets Shuri and Ramonda is way too dark. It was like House of the Dragon level territory.
I had the same thought.
I was watching in my press screening, and I was kind of towards the front because most of the seats were taken, and I'm like, is it really this dark? If I'm sitting normally? And Chris saw it last night, and it was like, no, it's basically that dark. I'm like, I want to see Namor, turn up the brightness. Let me see the boy. And we didn't, it took a while to get to that point. But that was my one other complaint, was just the aesthetic darkness darkness of that.
I literally thought the same thing. Like, are we in Westeros or Wakanda? What's going on? I do want to backtrack a little and just defend the idea of the whole runtime debate, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't mind a 3-hour movie. I think it works for Endgame. I think it works for Infinity War, and I there are plenty of 3-hour movies that I've seen 25 times. So I didn't go into this like, it's going to be long. I was open to it, but I did still feel it. And sometimes I think a long runtime doesn't 100% work. I say in this case, it worked like 80%. And that's pretty good. That's a pretty high number. That's a B. So,
yeah. And that comes right down to like at the top of the show. And I was like, you could have took 20 minutes from this and given them to Thor and Doctor Strange, and all 3 movies would have been better. Yeah, it's not like I go into a 2-hour, 40-minute movie saying this is going to be too long. It is just, ultimately comes down to execution. And that's not a huge criticism. Like, I don't feel that strongly about it. I'm with you. Namor had his wing ripped off his ankle by Shuri. We know from comics it can grow back.
Yes.
So that's good to know. He said Imperious Rex in his Telecan language. That is kind of his comic book catchphrase, which has been defined to Thor in a fight with Thor. He said it means I'm going to kick your Asgardian ass at an issue of Thor. I don't think he was talking about Asgardian asses while he was talking to Shuri, but I think the message, it's basically his battle cry.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So yeah, he says that often in comics. So nice little Easter egg there. I think that is all the Namor we have to talk about today. I did see one comment. Josh Harding said the Namor backstory felt like the Eternals Celestial Arishem exposition dump. I would agree with you to some extent. I think the one in Eternals was worse.
Yes.
I'm not a huge fan of the way it just went back in time to show us Namor being born, becoming a mutant, and all that stuff. He is, much like the comics now, going to be the oldest mutant, the first mutant in the MCU, like he was in Marvel Comics. He's the oldest living mutant, I believe, in Marvel Comics. And now he's going to be the oldest living mutant in the MCU. Maybe he's got a bunch of mutant babies running around. I don't know. When you're around that long, you might just be getting busy and spawning a whole mutant race. Maybe that's how they're introduced. So that means he is somehow now the great uncle of Kamala Khan in a sense. Maybe. I don't know how that works, but who knows? Maybe other people got mutant genes from another plant somewhere underwater or in the MCU or something. All right. We're going to keep it moving. Atuma and Namora. Not too much to talk about there, I don't think. They were powerful, badass, kind of super henchmen for Namor. And, the Namora rivalry with Namor is set up by the end of the film from comics. I think that's something we're going to see going forward. Anything you want to talk about on that front with those two characters?
I will say that final scene was like, that's what got me like, I'm ready for more of this dynamic for sure. But also, at that point, I'm like, wait, do I know who this person is? Like, which is why I need to see the movie again.
Well, it's hard to even differentiate these people when they're all painted blue and they're underwater and it's dark. But then you do see Mabel Cadena and Alex Livanali when they're underwater. You see them and they're speaking and they look like themselves. But then when they're on land and they have their headpieces on, their faces are largely covered and kind of distorted by being blue. So, like the police said, are they blue? Spear to the chest. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was gonna say, like, did y'all? Me and Brandon were in the same screening. For you two, did anybody else make a ooh when she hit that spear when he roundhouse
we're gonna
whipped
talk
her?
about that.
Yeah.
Oh God, I was like, yo, I haven't felt this bad since Peter got slammed through a floor in No Way Home. I'm like, wait.
I've seen this movie 3 times, and all 3 times when Atuma plants his staff in the ground and uses a Koye spear to slam her into it, you can just feel the air leave the theater, and everybody's just like, "Oh!" It is consistent. I thought, all right, let's talk about Ramonda and Okoye. I thought Okoye was going to die on that bridge. When she was surrounded by all of them, and then they got up, and he kicked the spear back to her. I thought there is no way they kill Okoye here, but then I was like, she might. How's she going to get out of this? I thought she was going to die on that bridge. That was one of the best fight scenes we've had in a minute. Certainly the best fight scene, I'd say. Well, I was going to say since Shang-Chi, but Green Goblin hand to hand with Spider-Man in that multi-level apartment building brawl was pretty awesome too. But this was not even for the sake of comparison. This on its own was just a fantastic fight scene. Props to Denai Guerrero, who's been kicking ass with swords and spears since playing Michonne on The Walking Dead. Upped the game for this one. Upped the game for that fight scene.
I was never worried. I'm like,
No.
we've killed enough people. Like, I come on.
Well, no,
but
we hadn't killed anybody
Yeah,
yet.
they
Well,
killed
T'Challa.
yeah.
Yeah, this was
okay.
before Ramonda. Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking of later. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, I still wasn't worried though, because at that point I still didn't think they were going to kill anybody else, and so I was super shocked later when it came. But I love this character so much, and I want so much more of her, and I wish we even got even more of her in this movie. Like, give me 30 more minutes, but just of her. But nothing broke my heart more than Angela Bassett.
Yeah.
Firing her, basically. That was I think that was the scene, one, like the non-Chadwick scene, that really hit me the hardest, because the acting alone, beautiful stuff. And we didn't really get to see her kind of get her role back. I mean, kind of, but not really.
No.
No.
And that's sad.
I think that sequence between Denai Guerrera and Angela Bassett, where they're talking about who has given everything to Wakanda, that genuinely might be one of the single, if not the best performed sequences Marvel Studios has ever brought to the screen. I mean, that was that was just a brilliant showcase of talent between the two of them. And it is. I mean, if not for the performances, you don't feel it as much, I don't think. But because both of those women did such a tremendous job in that sequence, it just comes through.
I want to backtrack from something I said in our episode on Wednesday, which is we were asked if Angela Bassett will win an Oscar. And I said no, because I don't think she's going to win. But the more I've thought about it, the more I think, Angela Bassett is one of those actors that at this point in her career, she should have an Oscar. Yes. And it's absolutely ridiculous that she doesn't. And I have been following the Oscars religiously since I was 11 years old. So I usually have a good grip on how it works. And this could be that, like, she deserves it. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve it for this movie, but I don't think typically one would get. I don't think we've never had an Oscar nominated MCU performance. But the more I thought about it, the more I think a nomination could happen. That the supporting category is a lot thinner than the Best Actress category this year. So I think that could help in her favor. I would love to see her win, just because that woman deserves the gold, like literally for anything. So I just I needed to add a little flair to what I said the other day.
I think it's possible, but and also if the Oscars actually want to get some ratings, they'll acknowledge people who put on good performances in blockbuster films, not just things that only hardcore movie buffs watch. That said, Michelle Williams in The Fabelmans is incredible, and she is.
But she's going Best Actress. She's not going supporting.
That surprises me,
because she would win if Michelle Williams went supporting. She'd win, and now she's given up that option, and I don't think she's going to win now.
That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'm rooting for Angela Bassett in the MCU. I think it's awesome. I don't know who else is in the category, but maybe there's someone else I'd like to see win too. But that performance was incredible. Anybody else want to speak on that, on Ramonda and Okoye, before we move on?
I would say it's a masterclass in having a bunch of people in a scene, and then it is a to B conversation. Yeah. Like nobody else gets it's just them watching a tennis match, because it's like, I mean, we all follow Okoye, but also that's the queen, but also I don't know who to, and that's, I feel like it's really underlines part of what the movie's about too, because it's about starting over in sort of ways, and the next whatever of Wakanda, they're not going to need her to be general. She got to be something else. She's a Midnight Angel now.
Yep,
she's a Midnight Angel. She got her Midnight Angel armor, and that is a group of Doras in the comics who are just another group of warriors. Aaron is showing it off. I cannot wait
to see women walking around in these outfits at cons. That was my first thought.
They are colorful blue Predator outfits.
I love them so much because they're so comic booky. Like, they could not have translated them better, but it was funny to me because I looked at the Reddit discussion for the movie last night, and 9 out of the 10 top comments were all like, God, the Midnight Angel costume is so ugly. And I'm like, wow, Okoye has a lot of burner accounts on Reddit because she's just posting over and over again. But I loved it because it translated the awkward, weird parts of that costume in such a cool way. I thought that was awesome.
Well, let's talk about Ramonda. Yeah. This was one of the things that I genuinely did not know was going to happen in this movie going into it. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, the loss that this movie naturally comes with. And you had the audacity to take Ramonda from us as well. I mean, That was tough. That was a tough sequence in the way M'Baku is holding Shuri back and Okoye is there after they exchange we just talked about, trying to save her, and Nakia's there. Everybody's there, and the queen has died. It solidified Namor as one of the best villains because he actually got to do something impactful and shocking. But it also was just tough and surprising to watch.
The shot of her in the water was
was
bleak. That was it was and the fact that she died for Riri, I think is actually kind of beautiful and sets up a bond that I think that I hope to see more of and continue between her and the people of Wakanda. But man, that whole scene, that was a big turning point. That's when the movie shifted for me of oh, this is it. This is a 4-star movie for me.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of cultural baggage from my experience. I went to high school, Katrina happened, you got global flooding in the South. Any image of any black floating people dead is it plays a little bit differently for me, but it was kind of necessary because this is about severing the ties. This is about fire and water and either cleaving a new future for yourself through disconnecting from tradition or hugging towards it, and you can do both at the same time. And I agree with Jamie. I really love that Riri doesn't communicate the exact same way that maybe some of us, but she's totally supposed to be symbolic of the way that the African American audiences, I guess African audiences of all cultures sort of gravitated towards the Wakandans as oh man, isn't this cool? We've always never seen ourselves, because when they break into her room, she's like, oh my God, what? I know who you are. I've seen you on TV. And that sort of builds throughout this, right? That the ideals that help sort of give a little kid that life in Chicago, end up furthering the way for another hero to come forth. So I thought that was interesting, right? But yeah, heart-wrenching because they killed Auntie, man. What is that? I said to Nick Valdez, she better fly through a portal in that armor for What If and Secret Wars. It better happen. She better get to use a spear one time. Yes. Come on, y'all. Like I said.
Yeah, the fact that, we said earlier, Shuri's last words to her were "Love you, Bob," before she hung up the phone and cut off the conversation abruptly, not knowing it would be the last one. And the fact that Namor stood there with his little wing feet and he said, "Bury your dead, mourn your losses." I was just, whoa. This is, I mean, to be honest, it's a level of darkness and weight that I appreciate the MCU delivering, but that doesn't mean it was easy. It was the emotional payoff you want to feel in a movie. That's why we go to the movies to go through these things and care about the characters. But when it happens, you're like, oh my gosh, they really took her from us. Yeah, that was a tough one. That was a tough one. And Wakanda has lost a lot. It's tough. Wow. Yeah. Anything else we want to talk about with Ramonda?
I will say, because I hinted at this on Wednesday of I love how much of phase 4 consistently, even though it hadn't necessarily tried to be, is just about grief and loss and just going through the past couple of years, how resonant that has all been just consistently across the board. I had told Nicole, this is kind of the final boss of dealing with so much grief in this movie, but it does it in such an eloquent and beautiful way that I'm so glad that kind of catapulted the phase to this point, because it felt very natural.
I agree so much. Even though I have some criticisms with this movie, I cannot think of a better way to end phase 4. It was the perfect ending. Ryan, I hope you're on a vacation drinking an umbrella drink right now and just really taking the vacation you deserve for this hard work. I'm just so impressed.
I personally hope Ryan is reading his email and seeing that I invited him on the show, but that's just me.
He can have his tiki drink and be on the show.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, come to it. That's the beauty of StreamYard and virtual Phase Zero episodes. You can join us from wherever you are. But yeah, also I have to say the only thing I miss the structure of the phases from the Infinity Saga where it would end with a culmination. This doesn't. To me, yeah, this is a great way to end phase 4 because it was clearly the best movie they've had in a minute. It really resonates with so many things we've gone through in the real world and what this movie has gone through itself. But I do wish that like it doesn't really feel like a phase. It just feels like here's a bunch of movies and shows. We're just rolling into the next movies and shows. Like what is to say why this is the end of the phase? What was the journey of this phase? Introduce everybody. Well, we're going to introduce more people in phase 5. So what is the difference? I kind of like the punctuation of the crossover ensemble event, but I'm sure everybody would probably say, yeah, that would be cool too. But also, if there's no story to do it, then don't force it, I guess. But yeah, that's how I feel about that. We're gonna take a quick break here. 1 minute. We'll be right back. We're gonna talk about Ironheart. We're gonna talk about Val and Everett Ross. Excuse me, and we're gonna talk about some more Easter eggs, Chadwick's legacy, and more. What this means for Phase 5 and beyond. In just a minute. So hit the subscribe button during our commercial break, leave a 5-star review, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Phase Zero bonus episode number 15, the Black Panther Wakanda Forever spoiler show. Be here, Jenna, Jamie, Aaron with me. All right, let's talk about Valentina Allegra de Fontaine and Everett Ross and the fact that these two had put some rings on it and took them off. They were married. That was an interesting development. That was one of those where you could tell who the Marvel fans in the theater were because everybody gasped. We're like, what? In every screening I've gone to. What do we think about this?
Oh, I have feelings.
Yeah, I found
I
found it so interesting. It was funny because I had my little screening notebook and I wrote down like CIA director is a woman. Who is it? And then like 20 minutes later they answer like, oh, it's Val. And it was like, of course it's Val. Like this makes perfect sense. I love that they were married because she was basically like a very long-term girlfriend of Nick Fury in the comics. Like they had a thing. Like you can look up certain comic pages. It was a thing. So it's like I love that we're kind of playing off of that of like her being involved with kind of the government side of the Marvel universe. That being said, I loved their dynamic, but all of these scenes felt so unnecessary to me. They were fun to watch, but it's like if I had to pick one thing to trim down or cut, it probably would have been them. But I want to hear what Jamie thought.
Well, you all know that Val is the embodiment of my favorite types of characters. You know, I love her deeply, and I've already decided I'm going to get a purple streak in my hair to honor her. That being said, I wanted so deeply to love this because it's like catered to me. But it didn't totally work. I think the only reason they made them exes is to show how ruthless she is. And that felt kind of forced to me. I think she could have been ruthless without being an ex of his. I can see it though. I can see them working. But it didn't totally make sense to me. And I love his performance as Everett. I think it's so funny, like that. Just like making him such an American is every time I see him do an American accent, it's funny to me. But like as much as I love her character, I do think that it was all a weird choice to put all of it. And I like his relationship to Wakanda, and I like that he's a part of their story. And after the first movie, and how much he owes to Shuri and knows it, and will never forget that. I deeply like, but it didn't. On paper, this should have been like my favorite thing, and it just wasn't. Except it did inform my future hairstyle, which I think is important.
Yeah, I think all the stuff with like the US and all that didn't need to be in the movie, but it felt like the thing that they were like, we need to have this so one of our big movies catapults some audiences into the next big movie that we want to be big, and which is obviously Thunderbolts. But it was like I didn't not enjoy their scenes, but I also feel like that could have been the 20 minutes we gave to Thor and Doctor Strange, and I will never get off that horse. So yeah, and I find it interesting that vibranium is what she's clearly after, and I feel like that could be the big Phase 5 conversation we promised on the show, the thing that is going on in Thunderbolts, or at least part of it, because I could fully see they all get signed up for this Thunderbolts team in one way or another, kind of forced into it. There are very different personalities on that team. You have some gray area people. You have Bucky Barnes, who clearly wants to be a good guy. And you have the John Walkers, who don't really care. And that's Lean's bad guy. And if Val hires these people and promises some reward or even forces them into it or uses various means, maybe blackmailing people to join the team, some of those people are going to be, cool, I'll carry out the mission and get this vibranium and do whatever it takes to get it. And some of those people are going to tear the team apart to say, no, we're not getting this stuff when they realize what the mission actually is. So I think that if vibranium is the goal of Thunderbolts, that's going to be an interesting dynamic it sets up within that group alone, and whether or not they're able to accomplish the mission and the effects it has. And that, to me, feels like a culmination event for a phase, which is what Thunderbolts was supposed to be for Phase 5 until the dates shifted. So we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, go ahead, Jenna.
No, I agree, though. I feel like the MacGuffin might not end up being vibranium, but I like the idea because Val has the line of, like, she dreams of the U.S., like, being the world power. Like, whatever that ends up being, whether they're looking for vibranium or something else, I think that then incentivizes her over the next few years of canon to establish the Thunderbolts and be like, oh, well, Wakanda and Talokan have this little alliance that, like, we're not supposed to really touch with. So, like, how can I get a team that can go and get whatever the MacGuffin is elsewhere? So I do think it's a fun way of doing that. We still could have probably gotten the information conveyed in like a third less screen time than we got, but it is what it is.
Which one of them's going to build the big ring to control Val to stop her from getting the vibranium, as half of them opt for one strategy with their mission and one side opts for the other, and you know Icarus flies down through the sun.
Little Icky, my boy.
Little Icky, pour one out. I don't know. It played a little bit differently for me. I don't know. It's very funny. In my head, she thinks that Okoye is his Jake from State Farm, if you get the reference. She's the other woman on the other side of the phone, which is funny to me intrinsically. And you can ask Brandon Davis. Aaron Preen raised her hands in the theater when she popped up on screen because I was like, what? Like, huh? You hear a bunch of stuff. Yeah, like in like doing this job. And no one mentioned this beforehand. So it's going to be a wild, wild surprise for people. And I think that for the people who are really hounding after these connections, that's going to do a lot more for them than maybe it did for me. Because I was like, ain't really what I'm here for, but it is funny. Like, and also I feel like I kind of understand her casting more after this because there's certain things that she's been in before that might be hinting where she's really trying to go, which I did not realize beforehand because I apparently need Jamie Drack there, like putting my hands on the blocks to put the square peg into the square hole. But I'm here now, so that's good.
I'll say this: as much as I thought it wasn't like needed for the movie, as a fan of the MCU who loves the connectivity, I enjoyed that it was in the movie. So as much as I'll criticize and I can't emphasize how not strong of a criticism it is. The runtime being a little long and the movie feeling a little long sometimes. This could have not been in the movie, but I am a geek for the MCU connections, learning that there are actual through lines and stuff. So I'm certainly not disappointed or annoyed that it was in the film. I also wonder, Val is the head of the CIA. Val hired Yelena to kill Clint Barton. Did the U.S. government try to take out Hawkeye?
I don't know.
I feel like I'm sure she has her own little naughty agendas. Not that the U.S. doesn't have a lot of naughty agendas too, you know?
Also, like, we don't know how long she's been CIA director. It could have been, like, after the events of Hawkeye. Like, it could have been a thing of, like, she was still in the CIA doing her little evil business and then now got promoted and is at, like, the top of the food chain.
What are y'all going to do when Thunderbolts ends with her and Sharon girl boss fighting at the top of the tower? What are you going to do?
Punch Sharon in the face, Val.
All right, we got to keep moving. We are running out of time here. Yeah. The next thing I want to talk about, we absolutely have to talk about Ironheart. Dominique Thorne is fantastic as Riri Williams, and we have just scratched the tip of the iceberg on this character. Her introduction was great. The Ironheart suit was not impressive for me. It's very impressive that the character built that Ironheart suit, but the Ironheart suit on screen left something to be desired for me. But I thought the character was awesome. I have some comic notes to share. I have some notes from my interview with Nate Moore to share, but I want to go around and get everybody's thoughts on Riri Williams and what you took away from it, what you enjoyed about, what you want to see with it. Aaron, you're at the top of the screen.
Hope everybody who had that show down in their rankings feels a little weird, because you probably should feel a little weird right about now. I feel like we're in for a Miss Marvel type situation where it ends up being very, very good with not a whole lot of hype before this movie and then afterwards. She's definitely the bright spot of the movie. Her and Winston Duke, I think the thing of like, you ain't gonna leave me here, are you? Y'all stop having Black Panthers when they got me. And freaking you bald-headed demon are the two funniest parts of the movie for me, probably. Definitely. So she succeeds on that level. And I think they threaded the needle with the Stark stuff. She's obviously inspired by like the inventing part of it, but like the Tony part of it, she's like, that's not really my bag. So I'm excited to see more.
I'm not gonna lie, I would love to see some Stark stuff, but I'll touch on that. Jenna, go ahead.
I loved it. I got like goosebumps a minute or so onto her being on screen, because like I love Eve Ewing's Ironheart run. I love Ironheart comics. Like I thought that they did such a perfect job of capturing her energy. It is this thing of, I know we all like talk about fatigue of like, do we really need Disney Plus shows for everybody? But it was this thing of like 5 minutes into her being on screen, I'm like, yes, I will watch 6 hours of you just hanging out, dealing with magic, doing whatever in Chicago, because it was just so captivating to watch her. I liked the suits. I thought that they were a really good starting point to then eventually evolve to her getting her own style. I feel like if she came out of the gate and had her comic accurate, very Tony inspired suit, it would have just been a little too similar. And I love the stylistic choices that they made, because they just looked cool. They looked really weird. It looks like a Power Rangers action figure.
Thing looked like a Power Ranger.
But in like the best way. I don't mind that at all. I think that that's an awesome choice. So across the board, she was so perfect.
Like I said on Wednesday, my number one takeaway from this movie is that I cannot wait for Ironheart. That's what this movie gave me the most, is that I am now hyped for that show. She was so fun, so funny. What a great character. Honestly, when it comes to the suits, I was barely clocking how I felt about it. All I know is that like, I think we all know from Tony that suits evolve, suits change. I barely even had a moment to have an opinion, because I was like, this girl's awesome. Do more things. So that's all I have to say about that.
Jamie hopes she's in Coven of Chaos.
Yes.
Ooh.
So a couple of things I wanted to talk about here. She mentions her stepfather used to work on cars with her, but ever since I think she outright says he's died, or or at least hints at that. In the comics, she has lost many of her important family members in drive-by shootings in the early on Ironheart comics. I'm pretty sure that's how her story starts. And so I imagine they might be going that route if but she's in Chicago in the comics, and she's in Boston in the MCU.
Because she goes to school in MIT in the comics, and then like just spends time in Chicago when she's not in school. She also like, since she has a suit that can fly, she kind of like goes back and forth between the two pretty frequently.
And MIT is becoming a major player in the MCU. Obviously, that's where MJ, Ned, and that kid that they're friends with wants to go to school. In Spider-Man No Way Home, and that's where Tony introduced the barf technology in Captain America Civil War, and also had like his guilty conscious moment where he learned about the damage done to an individual by Sokovia. But yeah, so Nate Moore, the producer of the movie and the president of production, or VP of production at Marvel Studios, told us in the interview you can watch on Phase Zero that she's not going to follow as directly in Tony Stark's footsteps, but obviously, has some inspiration and some nods. Like obviously her flying up to the sky and the oxygen thing reminded me of Iron Man 1 when he had the de-icing problem and he just flew too high and ended up falling out of the sky. And it also was reminiscent of Spider-Man literally running out of oxygen in Infinity War until he got the proper suit that could handle it, the Iron Spider suit. So there's clearly nods to comics. There's clearly nods to Iron Man. I personally love the moment where she goes into like the Hall of Armor in the comics and geeks out. She's like, that's the Silver Centurion. She meets Pepper Potts and she eventually meets AI Tony Stark. I don't really care if we get AI Tony Stark, but I do think it would be fun to see her geek out over Iron Man tech, Stark tech, but it seems that is instead going to be geeking out over Wakandan tech and the opportunities that Wakandan vibranium and resources, and technology is going to provide her. So that's cool. It also gave me just straight up Peter Parker, Tony Stark vibes from Captain America Civil War in a sense. Like she references movies. That's what Spider-Man was doing. She's got a mentor who's not nearly as old as Tony Stark was, but is clearly a genius inventor, doing all those things. And they have almost like a older sibling, younger sibling relationship. So I guess by default, that in a superhero film, you're going to be able to say, well, it's kind of reminiscent of that previous relationship. One thing I caught, she said she encrypts her stuff with a quantum computer. Maybe Kang is getting all that Ironheart tech. I don't know. She's storing her info in the quantum realm. What's going on? Maybe I'm just digging too much here. That's all I have to say about Ironheart. Anybody else got anything they want to talk about there?
I just loved her so much.
She was great. She was great.
I want to know how she gonna get that armor out the NSA or damage control.
Well, it's not illegal. The Sokovia Accords, as we learned in She-Hulk, are gone. So why did she burn all of her blueprints?
So people wouldn't find them, I guess. That's what I read from it. It's like,
you don't want the government to have that.
Thermite the drive, yeah.
I mean,
can't trust it.
I just it felt like she was hiding something illegal, and I was like, she's not doing anything illegal. She's just an inventor. Why does she need to burn up all her?
Look, it happened to the last thing she invented. It caused a war between an underwater nation and Wakanda.
Like they did also establish that she was like doing like projects for her classmates and stuff. So it's like even that might be like a thing of like that could hypothetically get her kicked out of MIT. And so I think she was maybe trying to cover up that too, on top of like whatever else she's inventing or designing in her free time. I don't know.
It's funny. She could have saved some time. They destroyed that warehouse. There nothing survived. Like, didn't it burn down? Didn't it get exploded?
I don't
think so.
I mean, the Popo showed up, so it probably didn't go well.
Oh, she's got an Iron Man suit.
Yeah, that was honestly, I'm just gonna keep digging into Iron Man references. That almost reminded me of when Tony put his Iron Man suit on in the cave for the first time, and everybody came pointing guns at him, and he just sent one. Well, he used fire. And a couple rockets, and she just sent one blast and was like, phew, straight up into the sky. So that was cool. Clearly, I mean, it's going to be impossible not to make an Iron Man, reference and connection when you're talking about Ironheart. But yeah, so she was awesome. Julia Delbo in the comment section said she heard something about an incursion in the first scene in the UN. I think it was. Ramonda said the word incursion, but it wasn't talking about the multiverse. She said there wasn't this sort of incursion. I forget the exact sentence, but she referenced the French army trying to go get the vibranium as an incursion with her people, and they took care of that. Yeah, that music that comes on every time the Doors are on screen. Oh, so good. Oh, so good. All right. A couple more things we have to talk about. We have to talk about what this movie does for Chadwick and T'Challa and his legacy. First of all, the post-credit scene, it doesn't recast T'Challa by any means, but it gives us an opportunity to have a T'Challa on screen, which feels like, the most respectful way to keep the name T'Challa, a character named T'Challa, I imagine is going to be reminiscent of the character T'Challa played by Chadwick Boseman. If this character ever grows up and becomes Black Panther on screen, I imagine that's going to be a very noble character that reflects that legacy and carries that torch forward. Really touching sequence there, introducing him. Rihanna really sending it home. Oh my gosh, just no dry eyes in the theater. Absolute silence during the Marvel Studios logo in every screening I've seen. And that montage at the end. I mean, that was just, yeah.
I cannot think of a better way to the long-standing debate of recast, don't recast. This is the perfect middle ground. And even if the recast people are maybe not 100% happy, I can't think of a better way to kind of give something to everybody with this choice. I can't believe I didn't see it coming. I felt so stupid. Like I was like, oh, of course, it's just perfect. It was truly the best decision they could have made, and I think it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ending.
I completely agree. I got goosebumps. Like I get goosebumps even just thinking about it. I also it is such a comic booky thing to do of, this character who we have followed for X amount of time, for some reason or another, we're going to now like kind of continue their legacy with their descendant who has a similar name. Like that has happened countless times across the board in superhero comics. I think I had heard rumors through the grapevine that there would maybe be T'Challa's kid in this movie, but naming him T'Challa and kind of setting up that ability to continue his legacy eventually at a later date was so brilliant. And I just have to shout out that actor that they cast, because he could not be more like Chadwick if you tried. Like they hit the nail on the head. That kid is just so magical to watch. Like I even just thinking about it has me emotional.
When you rewatch the film, you'll see he was in the movie earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
He was there when Ramonda went to visit Nokia the first time. He was playing soccer and he was the only kid who had lines. Spoke French.
Yeah.
This is why I got to see this movie again.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I just it was so weird sitting there with Ari, with my fiance, because we just looked at each other like, Jesus Christ, oh no. Like when he walked out there, he's so freaking adorable. His little cheeks.
Can you keep a secret?
Yeah, I'm sitting there in the background, like it's like if you were to ask a 4-year-old to imitate Chadwick Boseman, that's probably what you would get, right? It's very eerie, it's gripping. I think that all of the recast people, you sort of get your wish, like on a monkey's paw. You kind of get what you want in a weird sort of way, and the cast still gets their opportunity to say goodbye on their terms, which I felt like was really, really important. And even still, I mean, he's not going to be completely the exact same. I mean, his name is Toussaint. Which, you know, if you think about the Haiti of it all and other stuff, there's like a very loaded, like, sure, he says, oh, it's a historical name. And he's like, also, I am Prince T'Challa. Like, yes, little dude. Yes, you are. Brett, are we allowed to tease anything that comes later?
No, let's just leave it.
Okay, let's leave it. Okay.
Wait, just stay tuned to Phase Zero.
Stay tuned to Phase Zero.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
Me neither.
Phase Zero.
Walking out of the theater, I mean, even like seeing it with my mom last night, like it was just hard to even talk about it. Like walking out, I was just getting choked up just even trying to talk about the ending of this movie. It's heavy. I mean, Chadwick was such a great person. I mean, I feel incredibly fortunate to have ever met him and spoke to him, and he is just like, I mean, he's a light in the room, and it was, that was heavy, man. One Easter egg I caught this morning, and I'm glad I found this one on my own, because usually, you know, when I do these Easter egg lists, I'll go online and see what everybody's caught, and I'll compare how my list compares to everybody else's. And this one, I caught this last night, and I wrote it down on my phone. The license plate on the van that Everett Ross was in at the end of the movie, it read CB112976. And I was like, it's got to be like a key issue or something. Let me go look this up. My first thing was like comic book, you know, date of publishing. So I Google searched November 29th, 1976. That is the day Chadwick Boseman was born. So they had that right in front of our eyes at the end of the movie. And that was just, I mean, it's just a nice touch. That's just a nice touch. But yeah, I think they did as good of a job as you possibly could honoring Chadwick and carrying this torch forward, because they were always going to make a Black Panther sequel, but they did a good job. They did a good job. All right, the ending of the movie. Where does Wakanda stand now is the question I have written down in our notes. Shuri is the Black Panther, and presumably M'Baku is the new king. Where's this going to go?
I feel like there's so many options. I don't know. I feel like, because I remember there were like reports a couple months ago that were like, oh, Winston Duke just got like a huge pay raise for the sequel and for something else. And so it's like, I would not be surprised if down the line, if there is a like Disney Plus special presentation or series or whatever that is just chronicling him dealing with stuff in Wakanda. Like, I think that would be very cool. I like this status quo of not having it be Shuri is the like in charge of Wakanda and also the Black Panther. I like the idea of having both of them be elevated. But yeah, I'm excited for whatever is in store.
Mm-hmm.
It very much felt to me like the ending of Frozen 2. Where like they like actually you're going to be in charge now. And that's all I have to say about that. I don't know where it's gonna go. I have no guesses, but I have faith.
Will Shuri be in Kang Dynasty?
Oh.
I don't know. Is she going to be an Avenger now?
That's what it seems like. Or even still, I wonder too, like she seems like she's a little bit older than the other young crop of Avengers, but the way that her relationship is with Riri in this, you could find a way possibly for her to be along with the kids. I could definitely see that, which is wild to think, because she was not on my board of like who's going to be there with the Champions Young Avengers lineup, but it could be, you know.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting new chapter for Wakanda, and it is a place. I remember before this movie, I was thinking I want to see more of the ground level of Wakanda, and we saw it get destroyed in a lot of ways, but it was like it really did show you like what people do there, how they live, how some people work, you know, and they showed us some markets, they showed us some people, they showed us just humans in Wakanda, and it was awesome to see the ground level, and I can't wait to go back now that we know there's new leadership, there's, you know, what they've just endured and gone through, and that place just stays together. Got to respect it. But But yeah, and one other Easter egg I wanted to mention. This is the last talking point I have today, other than the fact that Michaela Cole could have been a little bit more used. I thought she's
a
great.
mean Jamie rant about Michaela
Okay.
Cole.
Ooh.
Okay. So
Ooh.
that'll be right at the only other thing I want to talk about, and then I'll hand it over to you, Jamie, is that Lake Bell was in the beginning of the movie. She's the voice of Black Widow in What
Yeah.
If, and also the voice of Ivy on Harley Quinn. Do we think she's dead?
I was shocked. First of all, I got so excited, and then she was dead, and I had so many feelings, and I hope not. Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
dead.
she seemed. I don't know how you survive that unless Namor was like, "Let me go ahead and save this person who's kind of famous by the actress playing them." But it looked like he was just kind of floating up in the dark skies and letting them go down with the helicopter. So. Yeah, I think that might be it for Lake Bell in the live action MCU.
It's not like he handed them life vests or anything.
No.
I expected her to be like some scientist of note, and then there was just nothing. I'm fine with it. It almost made that entire sequence feel a little too long then, because it was like, oh, we're getting so invested in these scientists and what they're doing, and then they just immediately, it was like the thing almost of just watching all of these people just get absolutely destroyed. And I was like, okay. Like I was fine with it. It was just such a weird direction.
And all in the game points out this is true. Freeman Everett Ross confirmed it in his convo with Okoye and Shuri. He said he had two people who were on that mission, and I'm assuming the two people were Lake Bell's character and the guy who was with her. And he says that his two friends are just gone. So I'm assuming that those are the two people, and the CIA at least believes they're dead. All right, Jamie, close us out with your rant here.
Okay. First of all, I do wish Michaela Cole had been in the movie more, but I feel like we're gonna get more of her. Like, I know we're gonna get a show, and I'm not worried about that. But I do have a bone to pick with her specifically because she did an interview where she was like, "My character and Ao are girlfriends. They're together." And I was like, "Yeah, a couple. I'm so excited." And then I spent the whole movie like, "Are they gonna have a scene together?" They had one line between them. And I was like, okay, was she lying? And then the very end, we do get that sweet forehead kiss, my love, which was great. But if I hadn't known it was coming, I would have lost my mind and been so excited by the reveal. But because she spoiled it, it was a letdown. And that was a bummer because it's like, yes, they're girlfriends. I'm so excited. But like, she made it seem like we were going to have like a whole romantic arc. But then we just got a forehead kiss at 2 hours and 35 minutes into the movie. So they better be full on living together, living their best lives in this Wakanda show, because I was promised something I did not get.
I agree completely. I wanted so much more of them. I hope we get it at some point because I love both of them so much.
Both Florence Kasumba and Michaela Cole are tremendous performers. So I think it would be nice to get them some more screen time. All right. Last thoughts on Black Panther Wakanda Forever spoiler episode. Jamie, what you got?
The more we talk about this movie, the more I think when I watch it again, I'm going to love it even more. I know I have criticisms of it. I know that for me, it wasn't perfect, but ultimately it was an impressive display of what they had to do. And I think I've said it a million times, but they handled it so gracefully, and I couldn't be more impressed. And I can't wait to see it crush at the box office, quite frankly.
Yeah, it opened up on Thursday night, already outdid the first Black Panther on its first night. So
Wow.
It'll be interesting to see where it lands at the end of the weekend. Aaron, what you got for us to end the show today?
I just was like very, very excited to actually get to talk with you guys about this, because I was listening to the episode on Wednesday washing dishes, and I was like, man, they are having a great time. It's that Squidward looking outside and Patrick and SpongeBob are running. I would say as well, I didn't get a chance to say this on the podcast. I read, or at least thought about putting like Sula by Toni Morrison and The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates and The Murmur of Bees by, I want to say, Sofia Segovia in conversation with this text, because especially Sula, like the water and the fire, it's like there's like a sort of lyrical tradition, like a sort of like, textual tradition at play with how, renewal works with both elements. So if you're thinking about the movie or thinking about grief and how it functions, give those two a read.
Love it. Thank you for the Rex, Aaron. Jenna, what you got to send us out of here today?
So I'm going to give even more Rex. I always say go read some comics. There are so many comics that you can read based off of this movie. I know Nicole, who was on the show on Wednesday, is putting together like the ultimate Namor reading list because she knows it in and out. And she was texting me yesterday and was even just trying to whittle it down even further because there's so much she wants to spotlight. Go read Eve Ewing's Ironheart run. It will make you fall in love with Riri even more. It'll make you so excited for the show. Go read the Doom War storyline from Black Panther because the energy of that is just all over this movie, and it is just such a cool storyline in of itself. So there's just so much you can read, and read the things that Aaron recommended because I love all of that as well.
Oh, can we shout out Kevin Conroy too?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say, if you have not read Kevin Conroy's DC Pride story that was published earlier this year, go read it and go watch anything that he voiced Batman in. That man is an icon. I'm still like heartbroken over that loss, but yeah, just go celebrate him because he deserves to be celebrated.
I love it. Good call, guys. All right, y'all. That is where we will wrap up today's show. If you have more questions for us, you want to talk more about Black Panther Wakanda Forever, send them to us in the comment section or at any of us on Twitter, and we will try to get to them on next Wednesday's show. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe to the channel, leave 5-star reviews. We have exclusive interviews. Ryan Coogler and Aaron Perrine is about to hit 100,000 views on our YouTube channel. I think it will do that this week, so that's really exciting. We appreciate y'all for the support. Great job, Aaron, in that interview. We have an interview with Dominique Thorne, which I am doing as soon as this show ends. I'm going in to talk to Ironheart herself. So if anybody has a question, you have approximately 1 minute to send it to me. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, the interview already happened. We have interviews with Simu Liu up on the channel from the Box Lunch Feeding America holiday gala, which we got to attend this week. We're going to have Xochitl Gomez, an exclusive interview that's going to publish on the channel later this week. So we get to keep publishing some really fun stuff and having fun with you all. We appreciate you all making that possible for us by liking our stuff, subscribing to our channel, and sharing our videos with people. So we will talk to y'all soon. Happy Black Panther Wakanda Forever weekend. I hope you all enjoyed it. I can't wait to hear what everybody thought of it. If you send me your tweets on the sinking ship that is Twitter, and we'll see you there. Bye, everybody.